and welcome to lesson 4 of Coding with Roblox. So, what we're going to do today is we are going to learn how to supercharge our functions essentially. So, last class we did the Disappearing Bridge project, and now this class, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be supercharging our functions. And we're going to do that by learning something called arguments and parameters with functions. Now, this is the project that we're going to be building out. Nice little simple one. So we've got a button here that just changes the mesh's color. But the good part about this is we're going to be doing this in like one line of code, basically. So we're going to learn how to reuse our functions rather than just having to, like we did in the last one, write like 5 functions that do the same thing. So essentially it means we're going to be writing less code. This concept as well is going to be really important going into the next lessons, so we do have to do it. Okay, so without further ado, let's crack on. So what we'll need first of all is we will need some meshes in there. So go to your toolbox, click on meshes, and then just search for whatever you want here. Now I'm just searching for Pokemon, but you don't have to do the same thing. So I am going to get a Raichu. Yep, just rotate that a little bit. And you know what? I'll just keep Charizard as well. Bro. Right, next thing that you're going to need is you're going to need a part. And the part is still on rotate. Part is going to be acting as the button there. So make sure it's anchored. Okay. Now, when you're dealing with meshes, you can't change the color of the mesh until you click on the mesh that you want to work with, you go down to texture ID here, and you delete this here like this. Now, meshes work, they're essentially projected onto these, on the meshes. So until you delete the texture ID, the color won't show up. Please do not delete the mesh ID because the mesh ID is how it's sort of shaped. If you delete it, it will look like this. And there's not a lot we can do with that. So it's the texture ID that you want to delete, not the mesh ID. Right, now. Go to your part here, and let's add a script. Oh, and I'm just going to make sure, and guys, please do the same with yours. I think I've got a few, yeah, I've got 2 Raichus in here, so I'm going to have to rename this one. So I'm just going to do Raichu 2. And my Charizard is fine because I've only got one of those. Okay. Right, now, inside the code, let's get rid of the hello world. And first thing we're going to have to do is bring in some variables. So we want our Charizard and we want our Raichu. So local, and I'm going to go Raichu. Is that a spell? No, spell. Raichu, like that. Equals workspace dot Raichu 2, because that's what I renamed. Do the same for Charizard. Local char equals workspace dot Charizard, like that. Okay. Right, now, the next thing that we're going to do is we need to build our function because this function is going to handle the changing the colors essentially. So we're going to make a function, local function, call this on color change brackets, and there we go. And we're just going to call this down here just so we don't forget to do that. So on color change, like that. Right, now, if we were to do this the normal way, if we wanted to change the color of Raichu and Charizard, how would you do that? Now, pause the screen here, and just with the old way before we get the new concept, please try and figure out how just to change Charizard and Raichu's color inside this one function here like this. So off you go. Welcome back. So how to change the color, we're just going to do Raichu dot color equals color 3 dot from RGB, and then it's yellow because Charizard will do the same thing. So char dot color equals color 3 dot from RGB, and then he's going to be a red. Right, let's run this now. Let's test this. Oh, right, that's working so far. Now, the problem is, if you had 50 Pokemon, you'd probably have to do the same. You'd have to do really big functions, and the chance of you making a mistake goes up by quite a lot. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how to work with arguments and parameters with your functions. Now, uh, everything to do with functions goes in 2 steps. So, like what we learned last week, function has 2 steps. Step 1, you make the magic spell. Step 2, you call the magic spell. Well, arguments and parameters, because they're with functions, they will also go in 2 steps as well. So the parameters, they go here, where you are creating the function. So they get built into when you are building the magic spell. Arguments, they go here, when you're calling the magic spell. Now, how I like to think about this, and the easiest way you can think about this is, imagine that your function is like an oven, and you want to do some baking. So you open the oven door. The arguments is the data that we are going to be passing into this function. Okay. So the arguments, for example, they would be like the cake mix, for example. Okay. Now, what would happen if you just opened your oven door and threw in a load of cake mix and then shut the door? Well, you'd probably make a big mess and you'd probably get beaten up by your mum and dad. Anyway, so what we have to do here is then this is where the parameters come in. Now, the parameters act as kind of like a baking tray. Yeah. Yeah, like a baking tray. And what these do is these act as like special variables, and they just store the arguments that are being put in there. So let me give you an example here. So we have the onColor change function call, and first thing I'm going to put in is Raichu. So Raichu is going to be going in the oven. So we have Raichu, like that, inside the brackets there, inside the parentheses. Next thing we need is we need a baking tray to put Raichu on. Otherwise, the function won't know what to do with him. So I'm just going to call this one, and remember, always call it what, always call your things in coding what they're doing. So I'm going to call this one body, like that. For now, I'm going to call it better. Pokemon. Right. The reason I'm calling this Pokemon is we're going to be passing in many different kinds of Pokemon. So this baking tray is going to be used for all of the meshes that we pass it in there. If you're not going to use Pokemon, then call it something else. Call it body, call it statue. But because mine are all going to be Pokemon, I'm just going to call this Pokemon. Okay. Now, Raichu is now stored inside Pokemon. So what I can do now is I can do this. I can say Pokemon dot color. Now, Lua, this is the only time where Lua will not help you when you're writing things. And the reason why is the parameters will stay empty until you fill it. So right now, Lua doesn't know what's inside Pokemon. So this is why I got you to practice writing out all those functions before, just so you have an idea about what this can be. So then we say equals, and then we want to say color 3 dot from RGB like that. And then let's make him a yellow. Yeah. Right, let's try that. Let's see if it works. Oh, that's working. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's kind of difficult. I think it'd be easier just doing it the old way. Well, let me just show you something here. And this is going to save you so much time if you can master this. Because this stays empty until you fill it with an argument, what you can then do is you can just call the onColor change again here, and we can just put in Charizard. Okay. And that will then do exactly the same thing. So let's run this. There we go. Now we've got yellow Charizard and yellow Raichu. Now, why is it yellow? So what's happening here is Raichu is being stored inside the baking tray called Pokemon. Pokemon, so the baking tray, has color equals color 3, and then it's a yellow color. Charizard is then, function is then called again on line 19. Charizard is put inside Pokemon, and then we change whatever is inside this Pokemon baking tray, this parameter, to yellow. Okay. Now, this will save you so much time. If we did not do this, we would either have to write another line of code, or we would have to write as many functions are there are statues, meshes going into your code. Now, the good thing about arguments and parameters is we can put in more than one of them. So let's say, for example, I did not want a yellow Charizard. What I could do is I could then make another variable here, just a color. So I'm going to call this one yellow, and I'm going to say color 3 dot from RGB, and I've got the same yellow going there. Okay. Now, this yellow variable, this will hold this value. So anytime I want to use this value, I can just say yellow, and I'll get that value. We can do the same for red. So local red equals color 3 dot from RGB, and let's get the red color. Right. Now, to use these colors, all I would do is I go into my parentheses, into my brackets, next to the Raichu, and I do a comma. And this will then tell Lua that these are two separate arguments going in there. So now what I would do is I want a yellow Raichu, and I want to do the same for Charizard, but I want a red Charizard. Now, we will get an error here for this because we have two arguments, but we only have one parameter. So Lua will get a bit confused here. If you have two arguments, you will have to have two parameters. So let's go up here, let's make another one, and let's call this one color, because that's what that's going to be. Now, what's really, really important here is your arguments and parameters, they match up. So Raichu, because that's the first one, will always be saved into Pokemon. And yellow, because that is the second one, will always be saved into color. If, for example, you were to swap these around and you would say red and char, then this is not going to work. You will get an error. The reason why is because red is now saved into Pokemon, and then we're saying red dot color, and Lua will just get really confused. So they have to be in the right order, and that's why naming is so important here. So char, comma, red, right. Let's test that real quick. Oh, right. Let's have a quick look at that. Oh, that's why I'm an idiot. Okay, so these things happen. So what we need to do here, good job if you spotted that mistake. But what we're going to do is we need to get rid of our color 3 from here, and we need to use color. Like that. Okay. Right, now let's try it. There we go. Good. Right, and the reason why this works is we have two variables here, both have using the color 3 from RGB, but they have different colors inside. So what we'll do is we will say red goes into color, and then we'll get the red color there. And char will be saved into Pokemon, and then we'll get the Pokemon there, and just have the title that we want to change the color of. Okay. Now, your challenge is to essentially figure out a way of doing this with the on-touch button. So what you'll have to do is you will have to create another function, connect that to the touch, like what we did with the disappearing bridge in the bonus activity. So if you haven't done that, go and have a look at that, and it'll tell you how to do this, to essentially change the color of this of these two things at the same time, only when it is touched. So without further ado, stop the video now, have a go at that, and then come back in about 20 minutes if you get stuck. Okay. Now, what we're going to do here is we will need another function. So local, and we're just going to call this one on touch because that's what it's doing. This one is handling what happens when the button is touched. Oh, that local function. Well, and what we're now going to do is we're just going to call the function, the color change function. So we will say on color change, and then we will put in our Raichu first, comma, and then this one's going to be yellow. I'll do the same here. So on color change, Charizard, and then red. Now, last but not least, we just need to connect this up. So we need to now create another variable for our button. So final variable local name button equals script parent. And the reason I'm doing script parent here is because this is where the code is living inside this button part here. Okay. And then we just want to connect our button and our on touch together. So button dot touch connect and on touch is going inside there. Oh, and I've encoded with that. Yeah, that's good. Right, let's try this. So play here. There we go. Well, right, simple project today, but a really important one. Have a go at that and see if you can create a few of these with all the different colors. Next lesson, we will be getting to more fun projects, like creating landmines and disappearing walls with if statements. So what we'll have to do there is we will need the arguments and parameters because we only want to be blowing up the characters. So that's what we're going to be doing here next. Right, then enjoy the rest of the evening, and I'll see you in the next one.